Hey, hey, hey. Welcome, welcome,
Yes,
welcome.
sir. Yes, sir. What's going on?
Nothing much, man. Glad to be here this evening. It's been a while, but
Welcome
nice to
everybody
be able to
back to
share.
your host, conservative brother, co-host, conservative brother Daily. Back at it again. Hope you guys could hear me okay. We had a little bit of couple technical difficulties starting out, but I believe conspiracy brother will be back with us momentarily. I hope everybody's doing well. And what I'm gonna do right now, I'll just until conspiracy brother gets back because we're gonna I need him to screen share the articles we're gonna discuss. I'll at least talk to you guys about what the title or at least the all right, conspiracy brother. I don't know if you're here, but I can't hear you, but I got the first article pulled up. Yeah, he might have to go
Okay,
come
yeah,
back
I'm
again.
here. I just had to
But yeah,
I had to
we're gonna
step away
talk
for a
about. We got a
second.
lot to
I'm
talk
here.
about. King
You there?
Charles Guard horse display about that having to do with other more sinister global shenanigans. So we're going to get into that, but that's kind of the general, I guess, consensus or theme of the show because we're a little bit tinfoil hat here, you know. So first thing we're going to get into is the 2024 Michigan primary election results. All right, this is coming from the Detroit News.
Right.
Let's just go ahead and get it. See, brother should be back by then. All right,
Can you hear me?
so in 2024. Former President Donald Trump won here in 2016, and President Joe Biden won in state voters take on a more prominent primary role. Michiganders head to the polls early this afternoon after the Democratic National Committee and state legislators moved the state up the calendar and established a February 27th primary. All right, so as you can see, we got here on the Democratic side, no surprise, we got Joe Biden that ended up taking 81% of the vote. And this was an area where you had a lot of smoke for Biden coming out of Dearborn, Michigan, a very prominent Muslim Arab American community in Michigan, where obviously they are very pro-Palestine with everything going on in Gaza, genocide basically, and the ceasefire that's been calling out for months now. So they got 13.2 from uncommitted. Now we look over at the Republican side. No surprise, we got Donald Trump with 68.1% of the votes, followed by Nikki Haley, everyone's favorite warmonger. I call her Hillary in Republican face. Doing what she's gonna do. So as you can see, it's broken down by county over here, and yeah, we can probably get into the more nitty gritty with the county. But I just want to test and see. Conspiracy brother, are you there? Conspiracy brother. All right, still no conspiracy brother, but my machine is still working okay. So I guess what we're gonna do is we can break this down by county. I think this is very interesting. Um, with what's been going on in Michigan. So this is once again from the Detroit News. Let's see here. Just waiting on my computer to load. But yeah, once again, guys, this is Uncomfy Truths. I'm your co-host, Conservative Brother Daily. You can follow me on YouTube, Rumble. I'm not on Odyssey yet. Uncomfy Truths is. But Yeah, this is what we do. We chop it up not every, but like at least twice a month, bi-weekly on Fridays and Saturdays. Just talk current events. Like there's not enough of these shows already, but if you got a perspective on something, you got a perspective. All right, so let's go ahead and see this breakdown by county on the Democrat vote side. See what we got going on. And I'm probably gonna have the worst case, maybe wait for Conspiracy Brother to get back, and then I might have to jump in and out of here. Because Sean, I got a little internet issues, but I don't know. Maybe it's my computer, maybe it's not. Just acted really funky today. All right, so we're at the Democrat results of the Michigan 2024 primary. Okay. I got to update this browser too. All right. Well, I'll wait till Conspiracy Brother gets back before I do that. Don't leave y'all hanging. Hold on a second. All right, so here's the breakdown by county. Joe Biden won a total of 115 delegates.
All right, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Followed by 2 on the uncommitted side. Now, if we look here, we still got Marianne Williamson holding for dear life. She's still in the race. And what's funny about that is that she recently had apparently she suspended her campaign, and apparently after winning 3% just because she beat Dean Phillips by 2.7%, she's like, I'm unsuspending my campaign. When have you ever heard of someone saying, I'm unsuspending my campaign? Marianne is just really the delusional side, the delusional Democrat version of Nikki Haley. Just as delusional as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, Conservative Brother, can you hear me?
Already? I mean, I appreciate, I guess, her more spiritual, motivational, woo-woo background. I mean, America could use more of that stuff, personal development. I just don't think I look for that as a quality or serious qualification in a commander in chief. That's just
Hey,
me.
Conservative Brother, can you hear me?
Conspiracy Brother, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Come back. I might not get back in. Because Conspiracy Brother runs the or streamer setup side.
Can you hear me?
All right. So we got that breakdown by county. Let's go ahead and look at the Republican breakdown. See what's going on. So much blue. Okay, we ain't gotta get into each and every county, but
Conservative Brother,
I think there's some specific counties I want to share with you guys. Those of you that aren't
Conservative
familiar with
Brother,
Michigan. Okay. Wayne County is the county that features Detroit. So Detroit.
I think he must have maybe he's got his
Terms of
audio muted. Let's see. Because I am speaking and it's clear on the Rumble stream. Conservative Brother, can you hear me?
I think Wayne County and Oakland.
Conservative Brother, can you hear me? Because now I can't hear you.
And once again, y'all, we stream every. We're going to throw up that information on the screen soon. So if you like to keep content like this going and want to make a contribution or maybe get a shout out, we're going to be working out more of the perks and logistics, maybe eventually get a Patreon and all that good stuff. Just stay tuned if you want to help contribute and keep this show going because we're celebrating episode 20. So really excited about that. Conspiracy brother, are you there?
Yeah, you can't hear me?
Oh, I see you. Okay, hold on. Yeah, I can't hear you.
You can? This is you can hear me?
Yeah,
The
my
output.
my yeah, I might have to leave and come back. Hold on.
All right.
Hold on, y'all.
So for a good episode 20, as you can see, we're still trying to work some of the slight bugs out. It's the nature of the
Apologize, y'all,
program.
but
I
technical difficulties happen.
I,
I might have
I can
to
hear him. He
hop off
can't hear
here and come
me.
back.
But you all can hear me because I just checked the video on the Odyssey channel, and so it's my audio is coming through. So the stream is registering that my output is showing up. So
Hey,
we'll get
conspiracy
it figured
brother,
out.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
All right, I might have to leave and come back, y'all. Apologize, uncomfy truths community. Um, we're just having a little bit of technical difficulties. I might have to jump on and come back. Conspiracy brother may already be on. I just can't hear him for whatever reason. But I'm gonna see if he can take over the reins. Okay, he can hear me. He can hear me. I just can't seem to hear him. Um, conspiracy brother, can you talk?
Yeah. Yep. Because it seemed like I could hear you before we started the stream, and now it seems like there's some kind of issue. Let's see.
Anything?
Yeah, I'm speaking. Let's see. You may have to restart. Let's see. Pull up the. I'll do a screen share. This again, this is just one of the situations we deal with a program like ours, given the circumstances. We have other obligations, and we're trying our best to um, give the best show possible within the limits of our abilities. So let's see. I'll try to pull up that article that conservative brother had. Let's see. The Michigan primary. Okay. But I don't hear him at all. I don't hear him at all now. So let me just let him know that. And I will share my screen So it looks like he is gone. So I don't know how much of this he went over, right? But I wanted specifically to look at the breakdown of the top two candidates. Let's see. We can see the elections. If we can just try to narrow it down to, I want to see. So, um, uncommitted has more delegates at this point than Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson. That's a lot. But I want to specifically see the full list of candidates and votes for this. May be the list I'm looking for. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Let's see if he's back. He is not back yet. He's not back yet. But if we just look at this basic list, so the Republican side of the ticket for Michigan, you've got Donald Trump with 758,892 votes, which accounts for 68.1% of the votes. We're not going to really concern ourselves with the delegate count because I think there is a, if I'm not mistaken, a caucus March 2nd. If it's not March 2nd, I can look, but I mean, it's not necessarily particularly important to the point I'm trying to make. Either way, the majority of the delegates haven't been awarded yet, at least on the Republican side. Nikki Haley received 296,328 votes, which accounts for 26.6% of the votes for the state of Michigan. And if you look at uncommitted, that's 33,554 votes. At 3%, Ron DeSantis still got 13,430, which accounts for 1.2%. Chris Christie got 4,792, which accounts for 0.4%. And Vivek Ramaswamy from Ohio, which I'm sure probably didn't help his numbers in Michigan, 3,718, which accounts for 0.3%. So if you look at the Democratic side of the table, give me 1 second. If we look at the Democratic side of the table, we can see that Joe Biden has we can see that Joe Biden has 623,415 votes. Here it looks like conservative brother is back. Let's hope he can hear me, and then I can stop sharing. Conservative brother, I'll be right back. Just finished reading the information on the candidates, the committed, the uncommitted, Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, and can you read the vote totals and the percentage of votes? I'll kind of go into a little bit of detail with that when I come back. I did not know if you had done it because when I restarted my computer, I didn't get to hear what you were saying.
Oh, all good. I got the articles pulled back up. But yeah. So we got, once again, y'all, thanks. Welcome back to Uncomfy Truths. We got Joe Biden as far as the Michigan primary that finished with 623,415 votes. Percentage of the total votes 81.1%, and a total of 115 delegates. In the uncommitted, we got 101,436 total votes, 13.2% of the votes with 2 delegates. And then thirdly, we have Marianne Williamson. I talked about her a little earlier. She came in at about 22,805 votes at 3%. And then finally, we got 600 votes, and 2.7% of the vote with no delegates. So yeah, once again, I was starting to get into the significance of the county results, and I was mentioning to those not familiar with Michigan, the most prominent counties are Oakland County as well as Wayne County. Wayne County, more importantly, which is in Detroit, which covers all the ground land of Detroit, as well as other neighboring communities. So I think what's very interesting, what we're going to do is give a kind of a semi breakdown of the more significant counties, and then Conspiracy Brother can kind of give his input. I give my input on it. Obviously, it's going to be old news by tomorrow. Already is. I figure we get this out the way before a lot of other pressing topics. So Conspiracy Brother, if you want, I can switch back to my screen share. I think I'm back to working okay.
Okay, you can hear me though?
Yeah, I can hear
just fine.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to, before we go back to your screen share with the county by county breakdown, one of the things that I wanted to kind of highlight is when you look at the uncommitted, they account for 13.2. I've seen the number as high as 13.3% of the voters. Joe Biden received 623,415 votes. And so, when you hear about it in the news, they'll say, oh, Joe Biden won Michigan in a landslide, right? But I don't even know. You probably have to go back to Jimmy Carter. But I don't know when the last time an incumbent president faced a primary challenger in any form, even if it was, candidates of the caliber of Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips. So we can't go back to 16 to see an example of this. We can't go to 2020 and see an example of this. We can't go to 2008 and see an example of this. Obama didn't face this in 2012. Bush didn't face this in 2004. This didn't happen in 2000. John Kerry, I was going to say John Kerry, but Bill Clinton didn't face this in 96. George Bush's father didn't face this in 92. Reagan didn't face this in 88, and he had dementia. We saw this happen where Ted Kennedy was a challenger of Jimmy Carter for his second term, but I'm not sure that it was as serious as this. I don't know. I need to look more into that. But when you look at the raw numbers, 623,000 total votes. Trump received 758,892 votes with 5 more people running. So what did Joe Biden has? Dean Phillips, who most people don't even know who he is. He's a congressman from Minnesota, and Marianne Williamson, who she's like a self-help guru book writer lady,
right?
And uncommitted. That was his. Donald Trump had uncommitted Nikki Haley, who has raised significant sums of money, right? Taking away almost, really almost half of the total votes that Joe Biden received, right?
Yeah. If you don't mind me adding, while we're on Nikki Haley, I think it's pretty obvious. Obviously, she had one of her big donors pull out this week. She had a lot of people dropping left and right. It's obvious that a lot of these politicians, they can end up ending their campaign and taking a percentage of that campaign money as take home pay. So I think it's pretty obvious what she's doing, and also trying to just get her name out. The last few dollars she can wring out, get her name out. But it's pretty pathetic at this point with Nikki Haley. I just don't understand it. I just want to throw that.
I watched a video from Glenn Greenwald on his show System Update, and he said the only thing that's going to stop Nikki Haley from running, because she continues to say, I mean, when you get beat by these margins, any reasonable person leaves. They just stop because you don't want to, you have no desire to be embarrassed in this way. When you lose at home,
Yep.
60 to by double digits, 20% in your home state, a place where you were a two-term governor, that's typically an embarrassment that most politicians don't want to face. That's why Kamala Harris dropped out in the primary before California, because she didn't want to be embarrassed. But Nikki Haley continues to say that she has a path to the White House. But Glenn Greenwald said the thing that would really preclude her from running any longer would be that all of her donors would have to stop giving her money. Because he said up to this point, as long as they're willing to pay for her to run for president, what she could eventually do with her campaign money is fold that into a foundation, and then she can live off that money, because they can't take that money directly and profit off of it. And so this is what you see. Our politicians, this country is just such, and the group that me and conservative brother are in, I've texted different articles. Some we might get, others we might get over tonight. He's got a kind of a hard out time, so we may not. But that our country is a dystopia, right? We live in a dystopia. And so even our politicians are so craven that defeat at home is not a large enough embarrassment to have you drop out of a race. You can be bought, you have a price, and there's no price too high, there's no action that is too morally reprehensible or self-degrading that you won't do it if they're paying you enough. Is there any wonder that so many of our young people are resorting to sites like OnlyFans and others? Because even the politicians, the older people, in their own way, are willing to sell themselves and whatever principles they claim to have for money. I mean, it reminds you of Catcher in the Rye when Holden said everybody was a prostitute. And this is what you see. Life is transactional. We all have to do different things in order to get from A to B, right? From A to Z, from life to death. But when you see people like this, and irrespective of the fact that Republican politics, you don't have a chance in winning. And the reason I like, Michigan, specifically living here, but looking up the statistics, what you find is that I think this is a representation of what a general election would look like between a Nikki Haley and a Joe Biden, right? Because Nikki Haley, Iowa, if I'm not mistaken, Iowa, or it might have been New Hampshire and South Carolina were open primary states, along with Michigan. So you don't have to be registered ahead of time. On the day of voting, you can decide if you want to vote Republican or Democrat. And so what that allows you to do is to make the decision. And so there was an article I didn't post, but someone else posted in our group. I didn't use it. We're not going to pull it up here today. But there was a campaign for Democrats to vote for Nikki Haley. Michigan Democrats vote for Nikki Haley in an attempt to boost her campaign. And I'm sure she got some Michigan Democrats' votes.
Yep.
But this is all it accounted for, because Republicans don't like her. And in a general election, you only get one vote, and it's for everything. And I mean, we can disregard the Electoral College and how that system works. But if it's between Joe Biden and Nikki Haley, the Democrats who voted for her, despite Donald Trump, are not going to vote for her come November. Yeah. Right? And so the reason this is realistic is because what you saw with the Democratic side was the proportion of voters who were uncommitted, saying that of the candidates available, they were not interested, which is more an indictment on Joe Biden's presidency than it is on Marianne Williamson or Dean Phillips. Even the fact that Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips were able to get approximately 6% of the vote is a big deal, because we know they have no chance of winning the nomination. But these, essentially 140,000 people have said to the rest of the country, or at the very least to the Democratic Party and to Joe Biden, that we are uninterested in your direction as leader of this country. There are a lot of Muslim and Middle Eastern and Arab members of Michigan who have voted uncommitted. And there may have even been some who voted in protest for Marianne Williamson or Dean Phillips, although I think their stance on the Israel-Gaza situation is probably about the same as Joe Biden's. They're just not in power, so, they have the benefit of not actually having caused, what occurred. But, Joe, if you gave Joe Biden all 100% of the uncommitted votes, he would still be losing to Trump by 30,000 votes, if I'm not mistaken, because he's got 623 plus 101 is 623, and 101 is 724. So he's still losing by 34,000 votes approximately. And the Nikki Haley voters are not all going to vote for Joe Biden. You have as good of a chance as them all going to vote for Joe Biden as you do of them staying home and not voting at all, which is a net zero as it pertains to the election and the results, right? And so I don't like Joe Biden. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. But I personally cannot, will not, do not support a person who made policies the way that he has for the last almost 60 years that he's been in government, right? The double standard that he's allowed his son to live with, that his family has lived with, the corruption, the deals with his brother, the backdoor deals. When you look into Ukraine, and like we talked about, I can't remember what episode of the show, but Trump got impeached for Ukraine, for looking into, for trying to look into what Joe Biden was doing in Ukraine. And that is the very country that appears to be a pure money laundering operation, where the U.S. government is pouring hundreds of billions of dollars to fund its government, its civil servants, their pensions. And we live in a country where, when you look at every turn, they tell you, we can't afford to give you health care. We can't afford to subsidize housing. We can't afford to increase the minimum wage. We can't afford to subsidize education. We can't afford to enforce any type of price ceilings, right? Because it's communism. But here we have trying to give $60 billion to Ukraine and $20 billion to Israel, two countries who do not pay taxes to the United States, full of people who do not pay taxes, at least in any large measure, to the United States. And there's never a problem with finding the money to foot the bill. Israel has a better quality of life than America. The citizens in Israel have a better quality of life. They have free health care. If I'm not mistaken, their college educations are subsidized. The United States is paying the pensions of civil servants and emergency service workers in the Ukraine. And we can't even guarantee national pensions for workers in the United States, but we are paying for those for foreigners. Something is wrong here. You live in a dystopia. So I'll stop my screen share to let you get what you were trying to pull up. But that, that's the theme that I would like to express and impress upon all the listeners and viewers of this show until something significant changes. Your country is a dystopia. You live in a, they say, you've heard crypto fascist, you've heard techno fascist, censorious regime. You live there. The president you have now is actively fighting against rulings by, if I'm not mistaken, the Supreme Court or federal court, some federal court, that the government is not allowed to essentially, like we talked about last show, how the U.S. government essentially contracted the Five Eyes, excluding ourselves, to spy on the Trump campaign. The government is not allowed to persuade or coerce private tech companies to censor or violate in any way the constitutional rights of U.S. citizens. Your current administration is fighting against that ruling by a federal court. You live in a dystopia. Joe Biden is a fascist. You don't need to be afraid of some fascist somewhere else getting into power. You need to understand that the fascist is here. And whatever you are doing in this moment is what you will be doing next time. Right? Whatever, just like when you look at COVID, when you look at how people who refused to take the vaccine were demonized. And I sat there and thought to myself, this is how slavery was able to exist. This is how the Holocaust was able to exist. Because the people were so whipped into a frenzy that they were willing to turn against other human beings for their own personal gain or comfort or perceived protection. This is how that happened. You had people saying people who didn't want to get the vaccine shouldn't be able to go to hospitals. They should be locked away. They should be forced. They shouldn't be allowed to work. You should take their children away. Intellectuals, Noam Chomsky, Piers Morgan, Jimmy Kimmel, blackface Jimmy Kimmel, lectured somebody. And so all the people who sat around while their fellow citizens, the global citizens, because we witnessed this travesty on the global stage, everyone who sat silently while this travesty occurred, while our rights were eroded away, while people lost their jobs, 70,000 healthcare workers in New York lost their jobs just in one state. And you did nothing. You did nothing. You did nothing to stand up for them. That is what you will be doing when the fascists get in control. Or worse, you'll be helping out because you are a coward who has no principles. Your comfort is more valuable than the rights that you claim to uphold, than the rights that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are written to protect. I think it's Benjamin Franklin said, men who would trade liberty for comfort will have neither. And I could be missing a part, but he said that. Men who would trade liberty for comfort will have neither. or their sons and daughters will have neither. You live in a world where you try to legislate away danger, and that is not how a free world exists. Can you make a world safer? Yes. Can you do things in a functional, non dystopian country that would incentivize people to want to be their best selves, to feel like their hard work is appreciated, that when they go to work every day, that they can bring home enough money in their check, that they can feed their family, that they can afford a family, that they can have a car and a house, that they can relax? Can you do that? That is how you express freedom and comfort in the world that you live in. But we live in a society, we live in a world where that isn't possible because your politicians have a price and it's always too low because somebody can afford to pay it. That's how you know it's too low. If your dignity can be bought by anybody on earth for any amount, the price is too low. There should be something so sacred and so valuable to you that no matter what the cost, you can't pay it. Nobody can pay it. There should be something that you're willing to stand up for, that you hold so dearly, that a person can't pay you for it. This is why America is going to lose. And this is not a hope or a wish. But when you look at Russia, Russian people love their country. Chinese people love their country. Iranians love their country. You have American people who won't even join the military now. People who come from long lines of people who served in the military, who have not even thought about allowing their children to sign up because they don't like the direction this country is going in. Your hard work is not rewarded. What you put into this country, you don't get out. So I'm gonna quiet down and let you do what you wanted to do with this information here. But the screen sharing is up for you. So if you do want to share anything else, you are more than welcome to, go do something else. You don't have to stay on the election thing any longer.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
think the point I wanted to make, I made, but I didn't get to hear you, so I don't really know how much of it you were interested in.
Well, I hear you, man. Yeah, I get caught up in the gospel, man. You speaking the gospel, so I had to kind of let you breathe, man. It's all good. I just wanted to kind of share before we head out, just as far as the Michigan primary goes. I wanted to those aren't familiar with Michigan, the two prominent counties, we could at least maybe take a quick look at Wayne County. That obviously covers the land of Detroit and other neighboring communities. So that's kind of one like a county to watch. As we can see here, Joe Biden took 78.2% of that county, so not the 81% Michigan overall average. So there's a little bit less people that are Team Biden, and you're getting a little bit more of the uncommitted that took Wayne County. And if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Dearborn fall under Wayne County? Am I not mistaken?
Yes, sir. And
Yep.
if
So that I'm interested right there. So you see the uncommitted really shot up for Wayne County. Then lastly, I wanted to I'd say what's the second biggest county? What, Oakland County?
Oakland or Macomb, but I know
Yeah,
you
Oakland.
can go. They had the breakdown for the city of Dearborn, and I want to say it was like over 50%, maybe even 60% voted uncommitted.
All right, let's check out Oakland County here. Then we'll go to Macomb last. Macomb is a little more conservative, reddish. So I'm pretty sure there's probably even less numbers. So Oakland County, okay, you get a little bit more, 4% jump. So 4% more people voted for Joe Biden in Oakland County over Wayne County. So it's not a huge surprise there. Oakland County, I feel like is a little bit more purple, probably leaning a little more liberal or center. So there's that. And then uncommitted, a little bit less of people who wanted to go the uncommitted route. Then finally we got, let's look at Macomb. Macomb. Macomb at. I should know this growing up in Michigan.
It's going to be to the right of Wayne
Oh
County.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. And then finally we got Macomb here. Interesting. Joe Biden took 79%. And then uncommitted, maybe a little bit. People decided to not vote for Joe Biden, uncommitted a little bit more than they were in Oakland. All
But
right,
when you see
interesting
the
stuff.
actual total numbers, you probably,
Yeah.
like you said, you probably still see significant higher voters in the Republican side of that. You'll
Hmm.
probably see way more than 48,000 people voting for Trump than what ended up voting for Joe Biden.
Yeah, yeah. Can we ever be sure about the polls? Never gonna be 100% accurate. Just like wearing a little face mask, people think still does something to protect you from COVID. But we all know what's up. All right, so moving on. Next article we have here, conspiracy brother. Maybe you can do the honors and maybe read this one. I did read the first one from Michigan.
Okay.
Then
So
we can
so
kind of give a
when I
little context if you want.
yeah, so when I posted this in the group, and I said, well, if this happens, or if he attempts this with any kind of um, of sincerity,
Hmm.
he can go and tell JFK hello for us. But
Yeah.
it's from RT. It says Trump plans to reform, to quote, reform, end quote, the CIA and FBI from Politico. U.S. spies have raised alarms about, quote, inexperienced loyalists, quote, end quote, threatening their jobs. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is likely, quote, likely, end quote, to launch sweeping reforms of the U.S. intelligence community if he is reelected in November, prompting concerns from the agencies that once baselessly accused him of ties to Russia. Politico interviewed 18 intelligence officials, including several former Trump appointees, who later came out as his outspoken critics. In an article published on Monday, warning that the possible purge could, quote, undermine the credibility of American intelligence, end quote. Quote, Trump intends to go after the intelligence community, end quote, said one former senior intelligence official. Quote, he stated that, he started that process before and he's going to do it again. Part of the process is to root out people and to punish people, end quote. The new president would replace, quote, people perceived as hostile to his political agenda with inexperienced loyalists, end quote. Politico summarized the claim by Trump critics. The two people specifically named were former acting director of national intelligence, DNI, Richard Grenell, and aide Kash Patel, who played a key role in declassifying materials about the origins of Russiagate. Political acknowledged that Trump's hostility to the intelligence community was related to the infamous document claiming that Russia, quote, interfered, end quote, in the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton. It quoted former FBI Director Andrew McCabe defending the inclusion of the so called Steele dossier produced by a former British spy paid by the Clinton campaign via cutouts in the appendix as merely due diligence. Though the FBI quickly found out the dossier was false and who funded it, they continued to use it to spy on Trump's campaign and presidency. When Trump challenged the intelligence assessment authored not by all 17 agencies, but a handpicked group of Obama administration loyalists, At the July 2018 summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, the spies felt that, quote, never before had a commander in chief so publicly delegitimized their work, end quote. Trump's DNI, Dan Coates, told Political that this prompted him to offer his resignation in February 2019, which was eventually accepted that August. Other Trump appointees turned critics interviewed in the article were former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who is a lying piece of trash,
Mm-hmm.
Fiona Hill, ditto for her, a top Russia advisor on the NAT, and she's British, I believe, which I posted this in the group. But in order to have, and I think this is just necessary for um, the direction of the country. I think in order to run for political office in America, you ought to be 3 generations removed from an immigrant family member
Hmm.
or immigrant family, right? If you got one family member who's an immigrant and one who's a Native American, native born American, then, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. But if both of your parents are immigrants, 3 generations, so not you, um, not your kids, but your grandchildren could run for office.
I like that.
Uh, and, and I think it's important for that for holding high certain levels of government, jobs. I don't know if high government jobs would even be sufficient. You may even need to go lower than that. I would need to
Mm.
see what is considered a high government job. Obviously, Treasury Secretary, Director of Homeland Security, things like that. But I think even under those types of jobs, advisory roles, I think would need to be removed because I don't think that it benefits. Give me 1 second. I don't think it benefits. I don't think it benefits the country when you allow people, because I think this is specifically what bothered us during the Cold War. You had a lot of people from Eastern Europe, Mika Brzezinski on Morning Joe, her father is Zbigniew Brzezinski, uh, Henry Kissinger, people like that, who may have had some political aspirations and even some acumen, but because of their own biases due to where they were from and where they were, how they were raised, I think they brought a lot of extra baggage to the United States. You see that a lot, I think, in a lot of Cuban Americans in South Florida. If they get elected to office, you look at Marco Rubio, where they have an agenda against Cuba and Castro, and America doesn't need that. We don't need those types of things. We don't need that type of influence affecting the trajectory of our country. We're lucky that we live so far away from other nations. We should be able to live in a country of peace and prosperity where we don't need to be involved and meddle in the inner workings of other countries like China, like Ukraine. We should be able to
Mhm.
figure out ways to be prosperous and protect our borders, protect our shores, protect our airspace, have a strong military for defense, but you don't need to spend as much as the next 8 or 9 countries put together. More than that, right? We can be
Right.
reasonable. So let's see.
Well, yes, in an
Uh,
article. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and
Let me give
so yeah,
what
but yeah, so
Well,
you
yeah,
can go.
let me get my 2 cents real quick. But yeah, you brought up a lot of great points, and I remember we brought up maybe a couple shows ago about really when I kind of made the mistake of sometimes I want to get the definitions confused, but sometimes it can come off to some that Russia's like a communist dictator country. Well, at the end of the day, you remind me like, no, with their nationalism, they have a certain patriotism to their country, call them nationalists, but once again, like Malcolm X was a black nationalist. So this whole thing that nationalist is somehow this sort of now white supremacist Ku Klux Klan nationalism, yeah, that's not good. White supremacist nationalism, I ain't about that life. So the thing here is that Russia has just always been the target. And once again, this isn't condoning everything Putin's done or really their history. But at the end of the day, just like Kim Jong-un in North Korea, you have to at least look back 2020 vision and just at least from a admiring or respect aspect, respect what they have built for better or for worse, that they are North Korea first, Russia first, our people first, you know, despite, sort of you have to crack a few eggs to make an omelet type of style that is questionable, especially with Putin. But with that, that's what the U.S., the military industrial complex, hates the most. You see that the countries that get the most demonized are the ones that are, in a way, a slight reflection, like maybe like a better reflection of what the U.S. could be if they were, once again, America first, country first, nationalism, pride of our people. So the U.S., what I see is that our government, as it is in the military industrial complex, they see that as a threat that they have to tame, that they have to censor, that they have to silence, and they have to do everything they can to put Russia on this fear mongering tip for the people. So the people never recognize that, hey, and ask questions like, hey, what maybe the countries that they're demonizing so much, maybe they got it right in some aspects. Why isn't our government like that? Why don't we have any pride toward our government or our people? And yeah, that's a big part of it. Why you see this over demonization of Russia and just everything they try and do every which way, whether it's through the Steele dossier, whether it's through, once again the Putin demonization. You just have to start asking yourself over and over again, what is it about the U.S. and all these presidents and the deep state elites and the swamp creatures that has them so scared of Russia? And I think they're scared of the people, the U.S. people, asking them the wrong questions. Right. So I wanted to kind of throw that little tidbit in there because we talked about Trump, Russia Gate, all that foolishness, but I want to kind of throw that little nugget in there. A lot of people aren't thinking about, and they got questions, and they're starting to wake up a little bit more, with the Russia Gate stuff. So that was just my 2 cents on this one. So if you had anything else you wanted to add, conspiracy brother?
Well, like we talked about in the previous episode, Trump said, "Oh, the Obama administration is spying on my campaign. It spies everywhere in the media, in lockstep, like we showed you with that neuro linguistic,
Yep.
that neuro linguistic programming. Oh no, they're not doing that. Trump is delusional, and now you find out it's happening, and so we still see, you know, even the joke that I'm saying, where you say he wants to reform the FBI and the CIA. Tell JFK, that we said hello. Is an
Catch me outside.
indication. It's an indication that the president is not in charge. The president should be in charge, and if he wants to be in charge, he should disband the CIA.
Mm.
I would go as far as saying he should disband the FBI. Right, that would go far in reforming these organizations. Put them under
Would, but
complete
you think they're gonna
control
kill
of
him?
Congress.
You think
Huh?
they're gonna? You think they're gonna kill him?
I think with a person as popular as he is, they'd have a much harder time than when they killed JFK.
Yeah.
You know, because America was still a very naive country. The average American
Mhm.
citizen was very naive when
Yeah.
JFK was murdered. And
Yep.
so even if people thought, oh, the government killed him, you know,
It
apart
was
from
a
the
small
shock of
majority.
the event, yeah, apart from
Yeah.
the shock of the event, you had so few people who would even have considered that a real possibility, that I don't think it would have gotten any traction with anybody trying to do anything about it. If they
Yeah.
kill Donald Trump, I think um, I think that would be a big enough deal for his supporters that you would definitely have pushback. And so, um, you know, it's not that's still not necessarily meaning that it's um, an obstacle for them, or something that would inhibit their desire to do it. But I do think that they definitely have to think twice about it. So
Yep. Yeah, most definitely. More developments on that. Trump keep fighting a good fight. All right. So next we have Mac. This comes from CNN. Macron says nothing ruled out, including using Western troops to stop Russia winning Ukraine war. I'll read this one. This comes from Joshua Berlinger, Amy Cassidy, Luke McGee, and Vasco Cotovio over at CNN, criminal news network. Oh, I meant CNN. All right. So what we got? All right. French President Emmanuel Macron has openly discussed the possibility of sending your European troops to Ukraine to help Kiev win the war against Russia, a potential major escalation to the largest ground war Europe has seen since World War II. Though the possibility of Western democracies putting boots on the ground in Ukraine remains remote, Macron's comments following a summit in support of Ukraine prompted a hawkish response from the Kremlin and sent European leaders scrambling to backtrack. A NATO official told CNN the alliance had no plans to deploy combat troops in Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who attended the meeting in Paris on Monday, said that while there was a good debate and detailed discussion on the topic, summit participants were unanimous in their opinion against deploying troops. Macron had told reporters at a news conference that while he and 21 other European leaders present did not agree on deploying military personnel, the prospect was discussed openly. Nothing should be ruled out. We will do anything we can to prevent Russia from winning this war. However, a raft of European officials came out Tuesday against such a plan. Among them were Ukraine's most ardent supporters, including the United Kingdom, Poland, Spain, and Italy, as well as officials from Hungary and Slovakia, two countries whose leaders have been criticized as pro-Russian. What was agreed among ourselves with each other from the very beginning also applies to the future, namely that there are no ground troops, no soldiers on Ukrainian soil sent there by European countries or NATO states, said Scholz. Macron, however, announced that a new coalition will be created to supply Ukraine with medium-range, long-range missiles. We're at a critical moment in this conflict that requires us to take initiative, Macron said. With 60 billion worth of American funding for Ukraine held up by Republicans in Congress, the burden is shifted to Europe to help arm Ukraine as it attempts to fend off a resurgent Russian military. Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines said they are already running low on ammunition, which has cost them on the battlefield. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky told CNN in a recent interview that millions could die if Washington fails to supply his country with more aid. Right there, maybe I got triggered, but you got your boy Zelensky panhandling a little more, doing his little thing, draining millions, billions. Anyway, all right. The European Union has already committed more than 150 billion in aid to Ukraine, but sending in troops. And once again, conspiracy brother, if you want to hop in whenever, I'll continue reading the whole article. But if you want to jump in and comment on anything, feel free.
Okay.
Yeah, the European Union has already committed more than 150 billion in aid to Ukraine, but sending in troops will be a drastic step. One that was unthinkable when Russia President Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion 2 years ago. Macron pointed out that the Western democracies have gradually supported their support to levels unthinkable when the war began. He highlighted the example of Germany, which offered helmets and sleeping bags to Kiev at the outset of the conflict, and is now saying more needs to be done to supply the country with missiles and tanks. The people had never said ever had that said never. The people that said never ever today were the ones who said never ever planes, never ever long range missiles, never ever trucks. They said all that 2 years ago. He said we have to be humble and realize that we have been 6 to 8 months late. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Tuesday that such a deployment in Ukraine will put the West in conflict with Moscow. In this case, we need to not talk about the likelihood, but about the inevitability of the conflict, Peskov said. These countries must also assess and be made aware of this, asking themselves whether this is in interest as well as the interest of their countries. Kremlin officials have made similar comments. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said last year that the U.S., the United Kingdom, and many others are waging war against Russia and are engaged in hostilities against the country by supplying Ukraine with assistance. A European war. All right. In hosting Monday's summit to such a strong defense of Ukraine, Macron appears to be attempting once again to assert himself as a symbolic leader of a united Europe as the continent embraces for the possibility of former U.S. President Donald Trump winning a second term. Given Trump's antipathy toward NATO and transactional view toward alliances, leaders such like Macron have stressed the burden must fall to Europe to protect itself from any Russian aggression. Macron warned that the start of the summit and Russia would likely attack beyond Ukraine in the coming years, threatening Europe's collective security. This is the war. This is the European war, Macron said. It's our soil and our content. Macron also signaled he was willing to abandon his long-standing opposition to buying arms for Ukraine from the outside the EU for Ukraine. The French president has been against purchasing weapons outside the bloc to support the EU initiative known as a strategic autonomy, bureaucratic jargon for a series of policies aimed at Europe less reliant on the US and other international partners in matter of foreign and domestic policy. Yeah, I forgot seeing an article of this. All right, we're almost there. While Macron's apparent shift on non-EU weapons acquisition may seem in conflict with Europe's drive for self-sufficiency, it is more likely a reflection of how badly European arms stockpiles have been hit by the war in Ukraine. As long as a year ago, officials were warning that the supply in Ukraine had left nations desperately short of a wide range of weapons. The urgent need to do this is as impossible as soon as possible means that buying exclusively within the EU isn't realistic. Region-wide drops in defense spending following the Cold War led to arms manufacturers reducing their ability to make such weapons. And rebuilding the industry won't happen overnight. This meant that Europe didn't only need to refill its own cupboard, but build a new cupboard and fill that one too. One European official told CNN last week. Macron's change of heart, however, doesn't necessarily mean he is moving on a strategic autonomy. It remains a long-term goal, but rearming Kiev is a short-term necessity. It's also worth noting that there is no precise endpoint to strategic autonomy, and many European officials have shifted on with the exact role the U.S. should be in security, European security, and to what extent NATO should be in that broker in that EU. But by arranging the meeting where this new short-term approach was agreed, Macron can still claim to be leading the charge on bolstering Europe's new, more informative, independent foreign policy. Still, even within France, Macron's comments have proved controversial. Various opposition lawmakers criticized the comments Tuesday, saying a French deployment would constitute belligerence. Through Defense Minister Sebastien Lecornu insisted that to say that we exclude nothing is neither weak nor escalatory. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department and the Pentagon both reiterated that President Joe Biden had ruled out sending U.S. troops to fight in Ukraine. Certainly, every country is free to speak to its own interests, but in addition to the president making clear that the U.S. will not send troops to fight in Ukraine yet, the NATO Secretary General has ruled out any NATO troops to fight in Ukraine, said State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller at a press briefing. Yeah, it's probably just take a U.S. attack on domestic soil, and we'll be sending American troops over there in no time. Pentagon spokesperson Major General Pat Ryder added, just to be clear, we have no plans to send U.S. service members to fight in Ukraine yet until we need another 9/11 emergency, and we'll be sending them trips over there soon enough. That's just me, though. But go ahead, conspiracy brother. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on this development. A lot to unpack here.
Definitely. So, the big thing that this all maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago at this point, Russia hit a building in Ukraine and they said there were like 30 French mercenaries inside.
Mm.
And the French said there were no mercenaries or there were no French soldiers on the ground there or something. And and this saying that Western troops, and there was another article, can't remember if it was CNN or MSNBC or what, but it was saying there's probably already or that there was European soldiers already on the ground and there's nothing wrong with that. And so, like, what they always say, what the U.S. media always says is they say the Russians accuse people or countries of doing things that they're doing.
That's quite the opposite reverse, I'm sure.
Well, that's kind of the thing that I've noticed. It seems like it's completely the opposite, and that the United States does that. They accuse other countries of doing things, and they're actually the ones doing it. But, you know, you have this situation where when you watch the news or you listen to any kind of news that's speaking about this topic, like for example, Ukraine, I think they said they've only lost 31,000 soldiers in the war up to this point, something like that.
I'm sure it's way past six
Uh,
figures.
yeah, I mean, it's at the very least,
Yeah.
it's in the six figures. It is firmly in the six figures at the very least. But the official Ukrainian number was like 31,000 people. And so, if the question is, if after 2 years you've only lost 31,000 people, why are we still sending you hundreds of billions of dollars? Why are we still sending you any kind of aid, military, otherwise? Why are you pulling people off the streets to join the military? Why have you raised the age that a person can be in the military? Why do they have people? I heard they have people now in the military who have Down syndrome. They have people who are dwarves now. They're just taking anybody. They're pulling them off the street.
Jesus.
If you're winning, why do you need Europe? Why do you need Taurus missiles from Germany? Why do you need Leopard tanks from Germany? Why do you need help from all the Storm Shadow missiles from the UK? If you're winning, right? But the bigger thing is this is an escalation, right? This is an escalation by a guy, Emmanuel Macron, who this is completely kind of ad hominem what I'm about to say, but I'm using it to illustrate a point. He is married to his 8th grade, like, math teacher.
Nothing to see there.
The woman is real old. Like, he used to go over her house pretending that he was dating her daughter.
Oh, you like the Cougars. Are we talking about the French president here?
Yeah, this guy here.
Whoa.
And here's the significance of what I'm saying, right? You didn't serve in the military.
Right.
When have you broken a sweat in your life? And obviously, maybe he ran around somewhere, maybe runs on a treadmill. He's in decently good shape. So, obviously he's fit in some capacity. But what I'm saying is you have all these guys who the only thing that they were able to accomplish was getting a degree from an elite school, and they were elected presidents, and now they're responsible for our sons and daughters going to fight and die for some rich pervert pedophiles.
Mm.
That's ultimately the situation. It reminds me of a song by Black Sabbath, which was Ozzy Osbourne's band before he left. But
Right.
it's called War Pigs. I just want to read. I want to read three verses, I guess.
Yeah, go right
It
ahead.
says, "Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses, evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. In the fields, the bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning, death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh Lord, yeah. Politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why should they go out to fight? They leave that role to the poor."
Mm.
And so, I recommend anybody if you want, to hear the song. It's on the album Paranoid by Black Sabbath.
What's the name of the song again?
War Pigs.
War Pigs. Another good one while we on that tip, the short-lived it was like this punk band called Death from Detroit. And they had a song called Politician in My Eyes. I think it may have been a cover of somebody else, but yeah, Politicians in My Eyes by Death is a good one as well.
I have to check that out.
I mean, no,
But
no shortage of political songs, but
but you literally have, and I have an issue with this in general, right? Society, we are being institutionalized. There isn't, and this is how I describe it. I don't have a 4-year degree. I have associates. It took me almost 12 years to get it. And so, any education that I have is essentially a product of me reading and my own personal self development.
yeah.
But I call it the HRification of the world, because what they have tried to do is take the corporate business model and force it on all of us on the ground. Manual
Mm,
laborers, people who, just do menial jobs, dead end jobs,
yeah.
jobs that should kind of be laid back, even if they are technical, because they want to be able to capture your brain. And what I mean by your brain is how you think. That's what I mean when I say institutionalized. They want you to think and act within the confines of the structure that they have predetermined is acceptable. In the book that I'm reading, I'm still reading it, the by Catherine Liu about the PMC. I forget what it's called now, but it's the case against the professional managerial class, I
Mm.
believe. It's a
I like
very
this book
interesting
already.
book. Yeah, you should definitely check it out. You should definitely check it out. Virtue Hoarders, the case against the professional managerial class. And it's essentially a call to arms for members of the professional managerial class to change the structure. I think there are some shortcomings with the book, but I think overall it is informative, it is well written, and I share a lot of the sentiments with the author. But you see this HRification that restricts the individuality and freedom of people in the name of not hurting feelings, in the name of liberal um, proclivities, right? Liberal self entitlement. And I'm not saying liberal as far as liberal and conservative, but I'm saying liberal as far as um, liberal, Western liberalized ideology.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it still may fall within a specific political framework, but I'm not saying, conservatives would be better. I'm saying more so the liberal ideology of, fake diversity, this DEI BS, and all these buzzwords, empty rhetoric, the BLM bullcrap, all that. That's what I'm talking about. They want you to think and operate this way in a bunch of symbols and empty slogans. They want you to self-censor. They want you to be concerned with not hurting feelings, while simultaneously they're sending your children to die for a bunch of pedophiles in a foreign country.
And on that tip, let me just throw something in there. The fact that most of these kids getting sent off to die, once again, they're late teens, early 20s, they're still at the point where their brains aren't fully developed. You know, that's why you see generation after generation, starting from World War One, World War Two, Vietnam. You get the young kids, you know, obviously the Vietnam draft and whatnot, but even all the way up to the Iraq War, where you get a lot of these young kids that aren't, once again, their brains aren't fully developed yet. So they all cocky. You know, we all been in our early 20s before, late teens. We're invincible. Nobody can touch us. We're at the time of our lives. And yeah, who isn't primed better to go off to this war? Because once again, these same politicians ordering these wars down, they're not sending their own sons, their own daughters. They're not going themselves. There's this great meme where it has like Hillary Clinton, Dick Cheney, George Bush, Obama, all of them just kind of, they're about to get dropped overseas to fight. Like this is how you end foreign wars. They're all photoshopped, like jumping out of a plane. So we see this over and over again. And just like we mentioned before, the neuro linguistics of these forever wars, even this background right here, just the level of just sort of social conditioning you have. I don't remember the last time I've seen anything about the conference. It says a conference in support of Ukraine. When's the last time we see a conference in support of Libya, conference in support of Iraq, a conference in support of Afghanistan? This conditioning that this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you're supposed to represent. Even like going back to even when Biden won and there was still some shadiness about that election. I never remember seeing like, between November 2020 when he actually took office in January 2021, whenever you do all these press conferences with the sort of, it's like a fake TV set where he's not even actually in the White House, obviously, but they got like a little station, little broadcast booth set up, and it says in the back, President, Office of the President-elect Joe Biden. And I just never remember in my memory between November and January when a new president took office. I just don't remember in my own collective saying like Trump getting on there saying like President-elect, Office of the President-elect Donald Trump, or Office of the President-elect Barack Obama. Maybe that's just me, but subliminally, that was the first time I saw it, like Office of the, because everybody was up in arms and like, what is this election going on and whatnot, So I see the same sort of social conditioning. Conference in support of insert foreign war here. The Office of the President-elect, illegitimate president. So I just want to kind of throw that in there, like these forever wars on the kids that are gonna die, and we just see this generation over and over again. Because once again, cream, cash rules everything around me. So it's no surprise to me that this French president is involved in this. And there's already talks about them trying to like tie up Trump to where he can't even pull out of NATO if he gets reelected. It's just so much. It just
NATO,
surprised me
or that
all.
if he it's NATO, and if he even holds up funding for Ukraine, it could be impeachable automatically.
Yeah,
But
did
this
that
is the
pass?
thing.
That bill pass?
I don't know if it passed. I mean, you'd have to have passed it in the House, and I
Yeah,
know Mike Johnson is not bringing something like that to the floor.
you're right.
But
It was
Lindsey
proposed.
Graham, for example,
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham is 68, never been married. Rumored that he is
Hmm.
actually a homosexual, and so he has nothing to lose. He
Right.
can make as many wars as he wants to, and he doesn't even have to worry about the chance that any of his descendants will die in combat, because he doesn't even have, anybody, right? Nancy Pelosi, her grandkids aren't going to the army, right? Chuck Schumer, his grandkids aren't going to the military.
Yeah.
And so you have to a person, because even you look at Joe Biden, his son Bo, he died as a result of the burn pits, I think, in Iraq or Afghanistan, where they just took machinery and weaponry and they just set it on fire.
Yeah, he
And
died
so
from the
released,
cancer, healing that
right,
in, right?
they caused
Mhm.
cancer from the toxic chemicals that were released and, vaporized. And even that, right, your son died not in combat. And you thought he was safe. Everybody thought he was safe. If you had known that your son was going to be in danger, you wouldn't have allowed him to go into the military. You didn't have a son and raise him and groom him essentially to take your spot in the Senate one day in order for him to die from cancer. You put him in the military so that could add an extra notch to his belt
Right.
so that he could have a better chance of winning an election and not just being Joe Biden's son.
Yeah, Bo Biden wasn't about to go fight on the front line, on the ground in a war.
No.
No, you protected class, of course.
But even still, going still opens you up to danger. And so a lot of these people, their family members are not even serving because the threat of danger is still too great. But your family, your kids, your brother, your cousins,
Mhm.
your sister, your daughter, they can put their lives on the line and be on the front with inadequate training, right? With insufficient protocol now because of all the ways that they've degraded the military hierarchy. And I'm not a particularly uh, war mongering person,
Mhm.
but there's a reason that you see the country being undermined in the way that it is. And again, I'm not even some great patriot. I'm not. But when you see a country that it appears to be running itself into the ground in the way that this country is, it makes you sit and think. It really makes
Mm.
you wonder why. You know, like you said, we can be tinfoil hattie here. We can. This is Uncomfy Truths. My name is Conspiracy Brother. We got Conservative Brother here. We do like to entertain some things that may be outlandish, some things that may seem a bit um uncomfortable, right? Uncomfy truths and unfounded. But understand that on the quest that we have to find truth, we're searching everywhere. We're turning over every stone. We're looking under every uh under every table, under every desk and chair, and every corner, behind everything, because we want to try to find out what's going on, right? We want to try to understand why these evil people who are in control in the way that they are and how we can free ourselves from it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that'd be it. While we're on the transition, these forever wars and young people dying, we're going to go to this rather tragic story. If you haven't heard this already, probably living under a rock. But I'll let you take this away, conspiracy brother. But I want to at least give my thoughts, at least on this. And yeah, basically, this is very sad. Goes to show you the level of extreme protest. I think there's also a uncomfortable conversation we have to have with when it comes to the subject of mental illness. With this, whether you're Christian, whether you're atheist, whether you believe suicide is wrong or not, or you're leaving behind your family for the sake of being a martyr and standing up for what you believe in. That's kind of like that's a question that everybody has to ask themselves where they stand on that spectrum. You know, so I think we have to I'm at least kind of throwing the seed of like we do have to kind of talk about at least the history Because once again, while this may not look good for the elites who are on the Israeli regime side, there is a history of mentally ill individuals, whether they be ex-military, whether they be, just people that fell through the cracks, and whether they go on to commit a mass shooting, whether they go on to hurt themselves or others, and whether that whatever happens, that event can be used to misconstrued or push certain agendas forward. That remains to be seen with this. I'm just kind of going to bring that up. Once again, I am against the current Gaza genocide going on. I'm all for the ceasefire. And I don't believe that, once again, there's plenty of lives that are dying every day. This doesn't sit right with me, was I'm sure a lot of people as well. So I think we just have to address that mental illness side and kind of the government, or at least shadow government's use of manipulating others, whether it's MK Ultra, whether it's just letting arming up mass shooters and letting them commit murders. I feel like there's a part of that conversation with this, but at the same time, is a tragedy nonetheless. So I wanted to kind of give my 2 cents there. But Conspiracy Brother, do you want to go ahead and give a little bit of context with this as far as this video goes?
Sure. So this man here is Aaron Bushnell, a U.S. Army, a U.S. Air Force. He's an airman in the Air Force who self-immolated in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. in protest of the war, the genocide that is occurring in Palestine. He live streamed it on his Twitch page. And so there's a censored video out and an uncensored video out. And he
Is
goes
it
into
censored or
detail.
uncensored?
Well, there's two available. This video doesn't actually show a lot of the actual fire at all. It really is him walking to the embassy and explaining why he's doing what he's doing. But
Right.
they've tried to portray this as a mental health issue, and it may be. But in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken, you had 3 Americans that I know of who self-immolated during Vietnam War protests. So
Right.
this is not, and it's not. There was a famous monk, a Buddhist monk, who did it
Well,
too. I
yeah,
think in
that one.
China.
That's what made me think of this. Yeah, what was the name of him? Or that was from Vietnam?
I'll have to look. I'll have to look it up. I'll look it up. Um, but um, but so it was a Buddhist monk. So it was Thich Quan Duc. He was a monk who set himself on fire in Saigon in 1963.
Yeah, okay. I remember that. I remember
But
watching it at school.
but
Well, looking
and
it up,
so
hearing about it in school, then I looked it up later. Yeah.
and so but so this is a very common form of protest.
Yeah.
This is not, it's not uncommon, it's not unheard of. And so they've tried to portray this as mental illness. I don't have any information to show one way or the other that he was mentally ill or not. But what I do know is that if you say he's mentally ill, you can disregard his actions as those of a crazy person. If you accept that a healthy young man who was serving actively in the U.S. military has chosen to engage in this form of protest, then you must come to terms with the actions that you as a nation have undertaken that would cause a man like him to do something like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that's based. That's based. I think that
And
we need to like I'm sorry, you go.
so that's just that was my point about it. We have to understand that the power structure wants to frame every situation in a way that is most beneficial to them. So apart from the fact that you've had essentially a media blackout on an active U.S. military member self immolating in protest, right? They want you
Mhm.
not to think about why this is happening
Mhm.
because they want to construct narratives. If they can control, and this is, I mean, this is unrelated, and I go a lot of places with my thoughts because how I understand information, what helps me to better process things is to try to draw parallels. So, one
Right.
of the things that came out of the news maybe 2 weeks ago was how old TV shows are more popular. So, people are just watching old reruns of Jerry Seinfeld show and Friends and Suits and things like that, right? They had a list in,
Yeah, I
I
can't
think
put
it was
Suits in the same category, but
well, yeah, but I'm
yeah,
just
I
saying it was like
feel
the
you.
streaming. It was just showing, streamed hours
Yeah,
of these shows.
yeah. We talking
And
about Martin as well. I'm one
well,
of
yeah,
those.
oh yeah, yeah.
I like me some Martin reruns. Let's go.
And so people, and so TV executives were confused. They're trying to figure out, why this is happening and whatever. And the reason is because the old stuff is funny. It doesn't have the agenda of the new stuff.
Mhm.
And so long as this stuff is already made, like in 1984, because they can't change it, they can't change the past yet, which is why
Mhm.
Disney is trying to do all these live action remakes. They can't change the past yet. And so you can still choose in your real life, you're non institutionalized. So like I said, I like to try to link my thoughts for context. It helps me
Yeah.
to better think clearly. You
Oh, for
can
sure.
free yourself from the institutionalization that they're trying to put you under,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Flex. Yeah.
And
So, mhm.
so they want to tell you, oh, he's crazy, he's a nutcase. And then 2 days after, the New York Post ran an article that said a friend of his. This is what the article said. I again, I can't verify one way or the other, but the article said that a friend of his, of Aaron Bushnell,
Mhm.
said that Aaron told him before he committed self-immolation protest that he had evidence that the U.S. military was fighting in the Gaza tunnels
Mhm.
with
About that.
Israel, and he just couldn't handle it. He could not
Mhm.
handle, and he speaks about it in that video, he could not handle the way that his government has behaved,
Yeah. It's a
right?
genocide, man. Yeah.
But again, if we allow the mainstream media or the government or its puppets to set the narrative and to project the narrative for all of us to consume, then we won't know what the truth is, right? We'll just say, "Oh, well, he's a nut." And I'm not saying he didn't have I'm not saying he's not crazy. I don't know.
Right.
I have never wanted to set myself on fire. I've never wanted to do that. But when I watched the video, something inside of me stirred up, and I shed a few tears because for a person to feel so strongly about a cause that he would make this type of sacrifice, like I talked about earlier,
Mhm.
when the slaves, when the Holocaust, when the tyrants and the fascists came, what did you do? How did you fight back? Did you join the mob or did you stand up for what you believed in? What was the price that Aaron Bushnell was offered not to do this protest? And obviously, I'm speaking hyperbolically, but
Right.
what was the price? Whatever the price was, his dignity and his self respect was worth more than to continue to serve in a military that is aiding or committing, if they're actively fighting a genocide?
Good question. Good question.
Right?
So, all right. So I haven't seen this video yet. I've been kind of squeamish. I mean, I want to say I'm squeamish, but I definitely didn't want to see the full one. I don't need to see him burning to death all the way, even though once again, I do respect him standing on this principle. And whether whether or not we decide whether we can make that same sacrifice isn't the point. But yeah, let's I guess we can go ahead and watch this. And you said this isn't the full one, right?
Yeah, this is really it's just him talking, and then
Yeah,
at the very end of it, you'll see him pour the whatever the
right.
what do you call it? The accelerant on himself and light his pants leg, and then like the screen censor, so you don't even get to see him actually ignite. It's
Okay, cool.
already censored.
Yeah, let's go ahead and watch this. I do have a 15. I got a hard out about 15, 20 minutes, but I definitely want to get through this. And then we got the King Charles guards display coming up. So I definitely want to get through that before I got to drop off. But yeah, let's go ahead. Once again,
Okay.
Uncomfy Truth audience. This is the video of last words of Aaron Bushnell,
And you
RIP.
can speed up the playback too if you want. Maybe do like 1.5 times speed. If
Oh, yeah, I mean, you watch at regular speed. It's all good.
okay.
I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all.
And so very clearly, even because I have seen it, but you see the police officer
Hmm.
pointing a gun at a man who's on fire, and the EMS technician is telling him to go get a fire extinguisher. So,
Right.
I mean, this is the most indicative of our country that you can think of. But,
Yeah.
he sounds like a person who is clear headed and clear
Yeah.
of mind. He said, this is an extreme form of protest, but compared to what people in Palestine have had to deal with, which is death, it's not extreme at all. What are you willing to give up to fight for injustice? And it doesn't, everybody doesn't have to give their life. I'm certainly not
Yeah.
trying to ask anybody to make that sacrifice. But he sounds clear minded to me. He sounds like he is taking a deliberate action. And if the new information that he understood that the US government was in fact participating in a genocide and he is a member of the military, this may be the only way he felt he could atone for his own sins. Who knows what he may have had to do with drones or other technology that he did not know, he was not aware of. And how poignant for this video, for this corpse to be
Right.
speaking afterward.
Oh man.
A man
Oh
has made the ultimate sacrifice for his principles. And here we have the crypt keeper who cannot string two complete words together, let alone sentences.
yeah. And he wants a little money. No, thank you. Yeah, it's more to come on Aaron Bushnell, and I think you couldn't have wrapped it up any better. All right, so all right, we got the last article right here, Rudders. I'll go ahead and read. I don't think this one's too long. I kind of
I
give my little.
I I can't remember if it's long or not. I know
It's
we
pretty
got
short.
okay,
Yeah,
because I know I
yeah.
got one in there that's really long, but I can't remember what it's about. I have to
No,
look at
this
the
one's pretty short.
artwork.
And once
Okay.
again, even though I got to drop off in a few, I mean, you can still continue, kind of wrap things up. Not a big deal. But I definitely wanted to give my thoughts on this one. So, all right, this comes from Reuters. Fact check. So we all know those government-sponsored fact checkers trying to control the wavelength of information. Say what's best for us versus what the truth is. So this comes from Reuters. Fact check. King Charles Guards display not linked to Jacob Rothschild's death. Social media posts have falsely implied a link between a display by guards of British monarch King Charles and the death of British financier Jacob Rothschild. Rothschild, a senior member of Europe's best-known banking dynasties, died at age 87. His family announced February 26. Video posted on X the same day shows members of the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment, the British monarch's bodyguards, who provide a 24/7 ceremonial guard at the historical entrance to Buckingham Palace, riding through the streets of London. False. All right, here we go. This is really key, y'all. This is kind of the theme of our episode. If you guys saw the thumbnail, Jacob Rothschild died just 3 days after 2 black horses were spotted with a captured white horse. Behold the pale horse and black flag outside Buckingham Palace. The post accompanied the short clip, which has been seen by 6.6 million times on X and shared on Facebook, implies the display is linked to the death of the Rothschild. It reads, Jacob Rothschild died just 3 days after 2 black horses were spotted with a captured white horse and a black flag outside the Buckingham Palace. Are you getting it yet? The post is a continuation, here we go, of baseless anti-Semitic trope that suggests the Rothschilds control the world, including the British royal family. Wow. So that's anti-Semitic now, like facts. The fact is there's banking families that control things, which is documented, is a baseless anti-Semitic trope. But let me continue. All right, Britain's Ministry of Defense told Reuters in an emailed statement there was no link between the video and the death of Rothschild. The 3 horses from the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment were conducting an administrative move, as we call it, a makedown, a ministry spokeswoman said. This occurs when the king has left London and the king's lifeguard at horse guards reverts being a long guard for a short guard. Long guard consists of one officer, one corporal major, 2 non-commissioned officers, 1 trumpeter, and 10 troopers, according to the Household's Division website. A short guard is reduced to 2 non-commissioned officers and 10 troopers. The spokeswoman said the clip shows footage from February 23rd, which is 3 days before the Rothschild's death was announced. She said one of the guards is carrying a covered Royal Standard flag, which is only flown when the king is in residence. When he is away, he is replaced with the Union flag. The clip shared on X had a watermark suggesting it had been taken from the King's Guard channel on YouTube. An identical video, a bit longer, was uploaded to the channel February 23rd. Verdict, false. The clip shows the number of guards on ceremonial duty being reduced as King Charles is away from his London residence. There's no evidence linking the display to the death of Jacob Rothschild. The article was produced by the Reuters fact-check team. Read more about our fact-checking work. So once again, to me, I wasn't really that caught up on, this means this is like linking to Jacob Rothschild's death. I never met the man. I know his history, what his family's done. So I have no tears of violins, but at the same time, like, I kind of linked it to what I shared with you earlier this week, Conspiracy Brother, on this sort of April 8th situation. A lot of other things going on. Yeah, the Rothschild died, but I wasn't caught up on that being linked to this Beyond the Pale Horse. But once again, if you want to speak to that more, feel free. But once again, there's just this history of like where the information is out there, but you have these government-sponsored fact checkers who want to keep control and prop up the narrative, prop up the agenda that they want. So I think that once again, this Beyond the Pale Horse is linked to a lot more. I wasn't just caught up on the whole Jacob Rothschild death, but I think it's linked to April 8th and a lot of other events coming up, particularly in the next month and a half. So That's what I got. What about you, conspiracy brother?
Well, so a video I watched from the King's Guard channel, which is like an unofficial fan channel for the King's Guard.
Yes.
Um, he said that you only see the white horse when the king is around,
Mm-hmm.
and um, so I thought it was interesting with the Jacobs Rothschild thing because he did die. He had died 2 days prior.
Right.
We understand the Rothschilds family, right?
Yep.
They have a Rothschild means red shield. They are a notorious banking family all over Europe. They have gifted homes to kings and queens. And so, their the branches of the trees of the Rothschilds family spread very far, or the roots run deep, however you want to use whatever analogy you want to use. But they're also instrumental in the formation of Israel as a nation. The Zionist elements of the Rothschilds family, they are Jewish. And so any critique of them and their control of the financial industry has always been met with calls of anti-Semitism when, it is more or less acknowledgement of the fact that they have been able to do what they have done. If I'm not mistaken, the family patriarch is Mayer Amsfeld Rothschild, who was a court Jew back in the 1700s or something like that, 1600s. And a court Jew was essentially a job during the medieval Christian period. Kings could not lend money because it was usury, which is a sin in the Christian Bible, was a sin. Is a sin in the Christian Bible. It was a sin to Christian people. And also, they couldn't deal with money on Sundays. And because Jewish people don't have those restrictions when dealing with Gentiles, they would be able to do banking duty. And so he got a lot of his money from that. And then, the big thing with the Rothschilds family was during the Napoleonic Wars, the Battle of Waterloo. One of the Rothschilds, I forget which one, rode his horse to London and told everybody Napoleon won. And so everybody was trying to sell all their land, and they sold it all really cheap because they were just trying to get rid of their land. So, because they didn't want to have to lose all of it to Napoleon and get nothing for it. And so Rothschild bought it all up. And actually, Napoleon had lost. So after that, it was too late, and Napoleon had lost the Battle of Waterloo to the Duke of Wellington, which is where beef Wellington gets its name from. And so they were able to control a lot of land in the United Kingdom. Sabby Sabs actually did a video breaking down the connection between the Rothschilds family and the formation of the state of Israel. But whenever there's a need to defend people asking questions, right? Just like with COVID, just like when you look into the situation with Russiagate, whenever there's a need to stop people from asking questions, that, in my mind, is a sign that you're leading toward the truth and the questions that you're asking. Because they wouldn't need to censor you, they wouldn't need to shout you down or label you any kind of bigot or phobe or ist or any of that if what you were saying was wrong or incorrect. But like the expression, a hit dog will holler. And so, when you start scratching, and you could look into the history of the Jewish people. I've looked into it, a little bit, and saw some of the connections to Eastern Europe. There was a study going back saying that that the modern Ashkenazi, I believe, Jews trace their lineage to 4 Eastern European women in the 15th century or something like that. So, I mean, it's certainly an interesting idea about this group of people and the need for them to have a homeland and the basis for Israel and the basis for Zionism in general. And you could even, I mean, you could look into the establishment of Israel, but the foundations of the Holocaust, who funded it, potentially, and why, and all this stuff. Because I mean, they have been trying to establish an Israel, a Jewish state since at least like the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s. So it's certainly, I would advise any listeners and any viewers to do some research, because for YouTube, this still may be too much of a sensitive topic for us to be able to talk about. But maybe we'll do something on Rumble and Odyssey, to be able to kind of hit on these topics, some of these topics, because I think YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki is Polish, but she also may be Jewish, and so there's a chance that it could cause some issues for the channel, and we're just at episode 20, so we'd like to be able to continue this for as long as possible.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's why we got to use the kind of like the yay quarter. It's they though, right? So we got to say they. I think even saying they, you get flagged for that now. It's like, oh, that's a dog whistle for the J word, So I just think, once again, this is a great topic. I know I got to head out, but I don't want to, it ain't like we got to stop the stream after I leave. Conspiracy Brother, if you want to kind of maybe touch on some more topics, but at the same time, yeah. What's that?
Okay, yeah. I might try to look into a couple things, see which ones I want to hit up before I get off. Mm-hmm. There are a couple that I think I might want to look into. I may look at the Aaron Bushnell just a little more. To read the article concerning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a one from the New York Post as well. So that article is there. But yeah, I wanted to kind of just maybe at least hit on this one before I had to dip out of here. I do apologize, Uncomfy Truth's audience. I do have an engagement after this, so I'm thinking of I'll talk with you offline, Conspiracy Brother. Maybe switching things, and maybe Saturday, because I got this sort of standing meeting that's going to be happening on Friday evenings now. So we'll have to kind of see where things end up. But at least on this tip, though, because once again, like we see this over and over again, the anti-Semitic veil that is used to shield any criticism. And once again, one of my biggest beef still with the left is that for years they were on this train. You couldn't say anything about George Soros. You were anti-Semitic. You couldn't say anything about so-and-so anti-Semitic for years. So that's why, while I'm still pro-Palestine and I'm about ending the Gaza, genocide and the ceasefire, there's still a part of me that kind of has a bit of bitterness for a lot of the pro-Palestine people who were just before this whole Israel Hamas October 7th. They were on the other side of attacking anything about the power struggle of the families. George Soros, you were anti-Semitic. So part of me was kind of like, all right, y'all are all of a sudden wielding censorship left and right. You called any sort of criticism of others anti-Semitic. And now that the Hamas attacks happened, now all of a sudden you guys are on the wrong side of it. And now the anti-Semitic labels are coming after you. So that's why I'm a little bitter with some of those on that side, while I'm still pro-Palestine. So we see this where Kyle Irving got thrown under the bus. Ye, who's still, Kanye has his issues. He's not right about a lot of stuff. He'll say one thought and not fully articulate it. He'll have a good vision of kind of what he's talking about, but he can't articulate the details. So, of course, they come after him. So I just wanted to kind of speak that last point here as far as this article, because it kind of gives us a nice macro view of, like you mentioned, the world agenda, the Klaus Schwabs that you can't criticize, the George Soroses that you can't criticize under the anti-Semitic veil. And all of a sudden, the left is now waking up to this anti-Semitic sort of labels getting used against you. They're waking up to it now since the Palestine incident. So I wanted to kind of bring that up to where you have a top 10% or probably 2% of the world, of the people who are once again trying to rain down rule on the peasant working class in this, anti-Semitic tropes, labels that we're using to just identify the person, not we're identifying the behavior, not the person and what their race happens to be. They just happen to maybe be that, but we are identifying the behavior, the history, and the very dark agenda that they continue to use, whether it's the Israel regime, whether it's the George Soros regime, the Klaus Schwab, Davos, WEF regime. They're all under that same moniker. I think the more people, whether you're super pro Palestine, whether you're super pro MAGA, whoever you are, if you don't see that macro view, yeah, we're going to continue to fight against each other, and it's going to be the same damn thing with the people at the top. So I wanted to kind of just land my plane there. But conspiracy brother, anything you want to add? Or now?
Well, I think you hit a lot of great points. Just really looking at the way that the power structure influences and affects how people see things. And the thing that I always try to do is I try to have my moral compass pointing towards truth, right?
Yeah.
In in the direction of truth. I'm always trying to find truth. It's a quest that is never ending, and as the show says, as uncomfortable as it may be, if it is the truth, I have to accept it is the truth, and I have to be willing to interpret it, given its fullest context. So I don't just try to decontextualize the truth, for a political agenda. I try to understand truth in a holistic way, and
Yeah.
so But I think you made a lot of great points, and so if I don't want to hold you any longer, so I'll let you step out, and then next show or whenever we just communicate whenever later, or if you get a chance to check out the end of the show. I don't know how much longer I'll be on, but I am going to try to hit up a couple more of these articles.
Yeah. Take your time.
And then yeah, definitely. So. And I appreciate you as always. Great doing the show with you. And whatever you got planned or whatever you got to take care of, good luck.
Yeah. All right, peace. All right, peace and blessings, brother. I'm gonna let you finish the show up. Uncomfy Troops, y'all. Conservative Brother Daily's out. I'm gonna give the reins to Conspiracy Brother Daily. And y'all have a good evening.
Okay, peace, man.
Yep.
So this is the article from the New York Post about Airman Aaron Bushnell. So it says Aaron Bushnell, U.S. Airman Aaron Bushnell, claimed to have classified knowledge of U.S. forces fighting in Gaza tunnels on night before setting himself on fire from his pal. And so this is Jack Morfitt, Andy Tillett, and Kate Sheehy, or She. Aaron Bushnell claimed he had secret knowledge of U.S. troops fighting in Hamas tunnels under Gaza, just hours before setting himself on fire in an, quote, extreme act of protest, end quote, against Israel, a close pal told the Post on Tuesday. The 25-year-old airman, who served in the Air Force's 70th Intelligence Surveillance and Reconnaissance Wing, but also interacted with radical anarchist groups online, ranted that he had, quote, top secret, end quote, clearance, end quote, for military intelligence data in the call to his friend Saturday night, he said. So again, you say, oh, he's with radical anarchist groups. Why does a young man in America feel like that? Why doesn't he believe in the American system? Why would he turn to anarchy? And I'm not saying this as in a form of judgment, right? Why would he turn to radical, for example, communism or something? And again, I'm not saying this is in like a pejorative way. I'm not saying that I have a problem with communism or anarchism, right? I'm asking because these people have a problem with it. If my children wanted to spend time with somebody else, or call another man father or dad. I would need to figure out what I had done to deserve such treatment. It would require self-reflection, right? It would require self-reflection, and then I would need to make changes in order to try to alleviate that from being a problem. But for these people, just like when I said they, try to portray him as crazy, if you are allowed to create a narrative, oh, he was mentally disturbed and he belonged to online radical anarchist groups, then you can disregard everything he said and did as the ravings of a madman. You don't have to listen to the fact that he's saying that he has top secret clearance, because I have to assume that if he's in the military and he has top secret clearance on military data, that they must do something to vet these people. What would allow him to be given this top secret clearance and simultaneously not show up, but then it would allow him to get this clearance, and simultaneously you expect me to believe that he has some kind of mental deficiency or abnormality. Quote, he told me on Saturday that we have troops in those tunnels, that it's U.S. soldiers participating in the killings, end quote, claimed the pal whose ties to Bushnell have been verified by the Post. Quote, his actual job involves the processing of intelligence data. Some of what he was processing had to do with the Israeli-Gaza conflict, end quote. Quote, one of the things he told me is that coming across his desk was the U.S. military was involved in the genocides going on in Palestine, end quote, the friend said, referring to Israel's war against the Palestinian terror group Hamas in Gaza. And, I mean, you could say they're a terrorist group, but I think that it completely decontextualizes the fact that these people were put in place by the Israeli government. So, even if um, you think they're terrible terrorists, the U.S. government and the Israeli government wanted to put Hamas in power so that there would be some kind of like civil war between the PLO, which is the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was a socialist government, and Hamas, who was considered more radical or right wing. So still meddling in their internal affairs, right? But it says, and then he said, quote, he told me that we had troops on the ground, that we were there and we were killing large numbers of Palestinians, end quote. Quote, there's just too many things I don't know. But I can tell you that the tone of his voice just had something in it that told me he was scared, end quote, the buddy said. And a quote, I've never heard that tone come out of him, end quote. Although Bushnell claimed he was imparting top secret information to his pal, there was no way of verifying whether that is true. I mean, I'm sure the U.S. government wouldn't easily tell you that this was true. Now, this is him. This is Aaron Bushnell here. We already watched the video about why he did it, but this is a censored video of him kind of when he started the The White House has repeatedly said it will not put U.S. troops on the ground in Gaza, and President Biden has said he hopes to negotiate a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas this week. Now, one of the things that I did want to say before conservative brother left is that the U.S. said they're not going to send troops to Ukraine. They don't want to send troops to Gaza. But the reason the Biden administration particularly doesn't want to do that is because they know that in an election year, that is going to be almost surely a loss come November. Right? There is no way that American citizens would be voting for a president who is saying that he is going to send you to die in a foreign country. Nobody's voting for that. No parent, no grandparent, no military aged person. And so they'll say, oh, you know what, but you know, as I've said, and as Emmanuel Macron said, and Robert Fico, who is the prime minister of Slovakia, who really broke the story and said, hey, they're going to be sending European troops to Ukraine to fight. That's what they're going to do. Emmanuel Macron said, the same way you said that you weren't going to send planes and long-range weapons and whatever, you said that all that whole time, talking to Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany. He said, look, man, you'll do what you need to do. Essentially, it's what he said. You'll do what you need to do, or what we need you to do, or what you've been doing. Okay. That's what he said. But it says U.S. Special Operations Forces have been deployed in Israel since Hamas's October 7th terror attack, according to the New York Times, to, quote, identify hostages, including American hostages, end quote, after more than 200 were taken by the group during its raid. Special forces have also been on hand to assist with strategy for Israeli troops in Gaza, who are flushing out Hamas members from the network of tunnels under the territory. But the report noted troops are, quote, not assigned any combatant roles, end quote. The Air Force confirmed Bushnell's title was Innovation Services Technician, but has not specified what security clearance he had. It did not immediately return a request for comment from the Post Tuesday. The friend, who noted he does not quote, support Hamas in any way, shape, or form, end quote, said he was surprised as Bushnell never previously violated his military clearance. Quote, he's had a security clearance for 4 years now, and it is the only time that he has ever, as far as I know, broke protocol and gave out information that he shouldn't have, end quote, the pal said of their conversation. Quote, he was frightened, end quote, the friend said of Bushnell, who grew up in a controversial religious compound in a tiny seaside town in Massachusetts, but ended up fatally lighting himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. around 1 p.m. Sunday while screaming, quote, free Palestine, end quote. In the minutes before setting himself alight, Bushnell had live streamed a short video address in which he said he would, quote, no longer be complicit in genocide, end quote. In his final Facebook post, Bushnell also wrote, quote, many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is you're doing it right now, end quote. Unconfirmed post on it linked to an account that appeared to belong to Bushnell included rants against Israel and justifying Hamas's terror attack. And look, you should be able to criticize. In America, we live in America. I've said this before, but you should at the very least be able to criticize foreign countries and governments that we don't even live in. At the very least, especially when we support their governments financially. They were made in anarchist and anti-police groups and sat alongside more mundane posts about computer software and asking for career advice. Bushnell also supported the Burning River Anarchist Collective and Mutual Aid Street Solidarity on his Facebook page. Bushnell's friends said he had no idea that the devout Christian would commit suicide, especially since the airman previously told him he was against it. Quote, he said it was against God's plan. There's always better solutions than suicide. Suicide is not going to fix anything, end quote, the pal said of Bushnell's comments to him at the time. So for Aaron to have done what he did, there were things that overrode that, end quote, the friend said. Quote, the problems that he was looking at, he couldn't fix. He would have made the decision to try to make it so somebody else could fix that, what the problem was, end quote. The friend said that when he learned about the live stream suicide, quote, my initial reaction is this can't be real. Quote, suicide is not something Aaron would do, end quote, the pal said. He added that when the pair discussed what Bushnell said he had uncovered about the war, quote, I told him to follow his conscience. That's always led him in the right direction before, end quote. Although Bushnell did not hint at what he would do the next day, quote, Aaron was very analytical. He would have made this kind of decision after putting a tremendous amount of thought into it, end quote. So his friend doesn't appear to think that he was mentally disturbed in any way either. And here you have a group of people in front of the Israeli embassy. Here it is. The Judaism condemns the state of Israel and its atrocities. That says, authentic Judaism always opposed Zionism and the state of Israel. Two Jewish men there. Aaron Bushnell, active duty U.S. Air Force, killed in protest of Israel's brutality. But his friend doesn't appear to think he had some kind of mental deficiency. So I'm almost at the bottom. Quote, Aaron outwardly presents as the most calm, cool, and collected person you will ever know, end quote, the friend added. Quote, you watch the video of him and you see just how calm, cool, and collected he is, and that is his normal personality. The most upset we would ever see him is he would go grab an axe and chop firewood, end quote. The pal who had known Bushnell since he was a teenager said he originally wanted to join the army, but after the pair looked more closely at all the branches of the armed forces, the young man decided on the Air Force or the Navy. Quote, he flipped a coin and it landed on the Air Force. That was in 2019, end quote, the friend said. Over the next few years, Bushnell was honest, full of integrity, and would do anything to help anybody anytime. Found himself struggling with constantly towing the military line, the buddy said. Quote, anybody who goes into the military bright-eyed and bushy-tailed like Aaron did gets involved with signal intelligence-related things is going to end up in the mindset of Signal Corps or they're going to leave, end quote, the friend said, referring to the military's communication and information system. Quote, Aaron did not buy into the mindset of Signal Corps. That mindset can be best described as making little compromises to your own internal fortitude so you're no longer the person you used to be, end quote. The source said, quote, Aaron couldn't, that's not within him, end quote. And again, I hinted at this, that it sounded like he had some internal struggle. We don't know what intelligence he was aware of, that he thought his only way to atone was to self-immolate. But for people to just dismiss him as mentally disturbed, just like the neurolinguistic programming with everybody saying all the exact same things in the media, this is no different. This is no different at all. It reminds me of comment number 1 from Gil Scott Heron, which is a poem. And he says, comment number 1 by Gil Scott Heron, the time is in the street. I'm going to just start reading. That's the second verse. The time is in the street, us living as we do upside down, and the new word to have is revolution. People don't want to hear the preacher spill or spiel because God's whole card has been thoroughly peaked, and America is now blood and tears instead of milk and honey. The youngsters who were programmed to continue effing up woke up one night, digging Paul Revere and Nat Turner as the good guys. America stripped for bed, and we had not all yet closed our eyes. The signs of truth were tattooed across her often entered vagina. We learned, to our amazement, the untold tale of scandal, 2 long centuries buried in a musty vault, hosed down daily with a gagging perfume. But I would recommend people look into this poem song. Comment number 1 by Gil Scott Heron. Uh, it's a very powerful song. It's a very powerful song that has to do with it has to do with kind of, around the late 60s, early 70s protests, Vietnam, and SDS, which were the hippies, the Students for Democratic Society, the Black Panthers, the Young Lords, and the overall theme or sentiment in the country. So I'm going to switch to this article here. It's a CNN article. Kellogg CEO, let them eat cornflakes for dinner. This was the original title, and I think the byline has changed, but maybe it hasn't. Let them eat cornflakes. Let's see how long this is. I may not read all of this. Oh, it's not too bad. It doesn't seem too bad. A lot of ads. Quote, let them eat cornflakes, end quote, appears to be Kellogg's CEO Gary Pilnick's advice to cash-strapped shoppers who are spending the highest portion of their income on food than at any point in the last 30 years. In an interview with CNBC last week, WK Kellogg CEO Pilnick said the company was advertising cereal for consumers looking for more affordable options. Give chicken the night off, end quote. The ad's cheery tagline reads. WK Kellogg owns cereals such as Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops, Corn Flakes, Raisin Bran, and others. Quote, the cereal category has always been quite affordable, and it tends to be a great destination when consumers are under pressure, end quote. Pilnick said, quote, if you think about the cost of cereal for a family versus what they might otherwise do, that's going to be much more affordable, end quote. His advice hasn't landed well, with people frustrated by spending 26% more on groceries since 2020. On social media, the campaign is being seen as insensitive. CNBC host Carl Quintanilla asked Pilnick if encouraging worried customers to eat cereal for dinner could, quote, land the wrong way, end quote. Pilnick thought the opposite, because he's an out-of-touch rich person who doesn't live around people. Quote, in fact, it's landing really well right now, end quote, Pilnick said. Quote, cereal for dinner is something that is probably more on trend now, and we would expect to continue as that consumer is under pressure, end quote. So again, he's not seeing people as people. You're a consumer under pressure. Buy cereal, you poor bastards. That's what he's telling you. Buy cereal. Eat Frosted Flakes. You live in a dystopia. Prices for groceries and restaurants have skyrocketed since the start of the pandemic. In 2022, consumers spent 11.3% of their disposable income on food, the highest level since 1991. The Wall Street Journal reported last week, citing data from U.S. Agriculture Department. Food companies have raised prices since the start of the pandemic to cover higher costs of labor, ingredients, and transportation. And because they could. And that's the big reason. It's not because of labor. Nobody's getting paid more money. Nobody's gotten a raise since 2020. Okay. And even if they have, the inflation has so outpaced that raise that it hasn't felt like a raise. The reason prices have increased is because they could increase, which is the last line of that sentence. Because they could. Cereal prices alone increased 28% since January of 2020, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In its latest fiscal year, Kellogg raised prices by 12%. Despite the CEO's assurances, Kellogg's advertisement and Pilnick's comments have led to backlash on social media. Some consumers have called the comments tone deaf from an executive who made more than $4 million last year. They note that boxes of popular cereals now cost more than $7, and cereal is not an adequate substitution for a full dinner. The backlash highlights consumer anger at companies for raising prices on everyday foods, and in some cases, boasting about it. Quote, this is what companies think of you, end quote, one user on TikTok wrote of Pilnick's suggestion. Quote, hashtag corporate greed, end quote, wrote another. McDonald's also has become a regular target for social media users complaining about prices. Viral stories lamenting the cost of a Big Mac meal, particularly the $18 ones at a widely maligned Darien, Connecticut location off I-95, have become a TikTok genre unto themselves. And this is the thing. And everybody said, hey, make minimum wage $15. And everybody was like, well, if you make minimum wage $15, burgers are going to cost $50. And they're going to get rid of all the workers and replace them with robots or kiosks or whatever. And they've kind of done that. I don't eat at McDonald's. I haven't eaten at McDonald's in 15 years at least. But I know that they have a lot of those self-serve kiosks where you order your food and then you go and pick it up. And they still raise prices, almost like they're not related. And this is how the capitalist class tries to persuade you to buy into their BS. If you make us pay you enough money to survive, we'll have to fire you. And the fundamental thing that people misunderstand about capitalists is that they always do what they have to do, and they only do enough. So if they could fire you now, they would fire you now, whether or not you worked for the same amount of money. Because if they can get a robot to do your job, the robot works for free. Even the cost in electricity or maintenance is going to be offset by the fact that they're not having to pay this robot any money at all. We have to wake up and understand that we live in a dystopia. Chemicals found in Cheerios, Quaker Oats. Let's see if I want to look at this article. I think I'm going to finish with the Wendy's article. So let's see. Since we're talking about cereal, this will be interesting from Fox Business. Chemical found in Cheerios, Quaker Oats, other oat-based foods linked to potential health issues. Study pesticide was found in 80% of people who were tested in the U.S. 80% is 8 out of 10 people. It's 4 out of 5 people. So, if you take your hand and you cut off 4 fingers, would you be able to function normally? It is that significant with the amount of people who have pesticides in their bodies. Let's see. This might be a little long. I'll read some of it, but it might be a little longer than I wanted to read. I'm getting a little tired. It is late. A pesticide linked to reproductive and developmental issues in animals was found in oat-based foods sold in the U.S., including under major brand names like Cheerios and Quaker Oats, according to a recent peer-reviewed study. I just ate a big bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios, so that's great to know. Hopefully, I'm fully developed. Chlormquat was detected in 80% of people tested in 3 geographical regions of the U.S. between 2017 and 2023. According to the study by the Environmental Working Group, EWG, and published in the Journal of Exposure, Science, and Environmental Epidemiology, researchers also found that, quote, the concentrations detected in 2023 samples were significantly higher than previous year's samples, end quote. While some studies published in the National Library of Medicine linked the chemicals to reproductive or development issues in animals, it raises, quote, questions about whether it could also harm humans, end quote, EWG researchers noted. And why wouldn't it? Aren't we animals? EWG is a nonprofit American activist group specializing in research and advocacy in areas such as agricultural subsidies, toxic chemicals, drinking water, pollutants, and corporate accountability. In 2018, researchers noted that the Environmental Protection Agency published acceptable food tolerance levels for chlormaquat chloride in imported oats, wheat, barley, as well as some animal products. In 2020, allowable levels were then increased for oats, the study said. The use of chlormaquat on food crops like wheat, oats, and barley decreases the stem heights of the plants, making them less likely to bend over and easier to harvest. Along with testing the pesticide in humans, researchers simultaneously studied the levels of chlormaquat in oat and wheat-based products purchased in the U.S. in 2022 and 2023, and identified, quote, detectable levels of chlormaquat in all but 2 of the 25 conventional oat-based products, end quote. The 2 products with no detectable levels of chlormaquat are 365 Whole Foods Market fruit and nut muesli and Kellogg's Special K fruit and yogurt. In certain cases, the concentration was non-detectable, while other products showed a, quote, high prevalence of chlormaquat in oats, end quote. In May 2023, EWG said it detected the chemical in 92% of oat-based foods, including Quaker Oats and Cheerios. So you see Kellogg's probably has it, and they want you to eat cereal for dinner. Give chicken the night off and eat our poison oats. Quaker Oats, which is owned by PepsiCo, told Fox Business that the company stands, quote, by the safety and quality, end quote, of its products. Quote, we have a comprehensive food safety management system in place. We adhere to all regulatory guidelines to ensure that the safest, highest quality products for our consumers, end quote. The company said in a statement. General Mills, which owns the Cheerios brand, said that all the products, quote, adhere to all regulatory requirements, end quote. Quote, food safety is always our top priority at General Mills, and we take care to ensure food is prepared and packaged in the safest possible way, end quote, the company said. And so that's it. So, you know, we live in a dystopia. I'm trying to see what this is about. Health choices. But I don't know if this is an ad, but we live in a dystopia. We live in a dystopia. Wow, it's terrible. It's terrible. So, last article I want to go over just to show you the dystopian nightmare we're in. Hopefully, it's not long. This will be my last one. So Wendy's made a lot of waves when they said that they were going to try to go to a surge pricing model like Uber, which, during peak hours, they would increase the price of their food products. Understandably, this received quite a bit of backlash, and they came out and said they won't use surge pricing. And so we'll go into this article and see if we can get to the bottom of it. That's not too long. All right, I think I can finish. Quite a bit of pictures, but don't call Wendy's new pricing plan, quote, surge pricing, end quote. In a blog post Tuesday, the fast food chain explained that its test of new menus with prices that change throughout the day is not meant to cost more for customers. Quote, this was misconstrued in some media reports as an intent to raise prices when demand is highest at our restaurants, end quote. The company statement read, quote, digital menu boards could allow us to change the menu offerings at different times of day and offer discounts and value offers to our customers more easily, particularly in the slower times of day. So it says digital menu boards could allow us to change, not would allow. Right? Am I looking too much into it? I don't think I am. Because that's weird to say digital menu boards could allow us to, because if you're telling me that you're not going to increase the prices during peak hours, then it should be they should. They would, not they could. Right? In an email to CNN, Wendy's was more blunt. Quote, Wendy's will not implement surge pricing, which is the practice of raising prices when demand is highest. This was not a change in plans. It was never our plan to raise prices when customers are visiting us the most, end quote. But the questions over what to call Wendy's experiment, surge pricing, dynamic pricing, something else, underscore the PR problem around a pricing system that's already been used for years in a range of industries from ride sharing to airlines to local happy hour, to your local happy hour. Surge pricing refers to dynamic pricing, which is a way for businesses to change more or less based on how many people want their products at any given time. Quote, whoever called it surge pricing made the worst marketing mistake you could think of, end quote, said Juan Castillo, assistant professor of economics at the University of Pennsylvania. Quote, surge pricing sent a message to everybody that it is mostly about increasing prices. That created a very negative reaction. Surprisingly from one, I guess. From the public, end quote. Dynamic pricing uses real-time data to figure out where a company can set their prices. That lets companies earn the maximum that they can at any given moment. Castillo said, but it depends on two critical factors, innovative technology and managing, quote, backlash from customers, end quote. As Wendy's learned this week when the memes about unaffordable burgers started flying after their initial announcement. Chuck Bell, director of advocacy at Consumer Reports, told CNN that consumers are most familiar with surge pricing from experiences with high prices at companies like Uber and Lyft. And I don't even know if that's necessarily accurate because you don't know what the standard price for Uber and Lyft is per ride. So the dynamic model works there because there isn't a flat rate for a ride. You already pay more based on where you're going. So if there is dynamic pricing factored into it, you don't really know because you already know, well, I'm going further or whatever the distance. So it's not a big deal. With this, you already have a baseline in your mind because you've come to Wendy's with the expectation that I've come to your restaurant and I want to buy a burger. It shouldn't be more than this because this is a busy time of day. Quote, the prices of ride-sharing services are generally higher at rush hour, end quote, Bell said. Quote, your options are more limited when there is a peak demand for other customers. So you pay a higher price to get the thing you want, end quote. Castillo said despite frustration with price surges, dynamic pricing does not just mean higher prices. While consumers pay more during peak hours, this also means they pay less during off-peak hours. Think of those 2-for-1 appetizer or drink specials at your neighborhood happy hour. Quote, dynamic pricing means higher prices sometimes, lower price sometimes, end quote, Castillo explained. But if it's unlikely that you'll be at the restaurant off-peak hours, that's irrelevant to you. The rise of dynamic pricing. So dynamic pricing coming to Wendy's highlights a potential, quote, turning point, end quote, in technology for the fast food industry, said Jonathan Mays, editor-in-chief of trade publication Restaurant Business. Quote, if Wendy's idea works, it could get others to do something similar, and it will. I wouldn't be surprised to see another chain or two test the idea themselves, given what Wendy's is doing, end quote, Mays said. Dynamic pricing has existed for decades for airline tickets, Castillo explained, but the 2010s ushered in an era of greater applications. Again, when you're traveling distance, it's not the same because you expect the price to be affected by the amount of time or distance that you're traveling. If I'm buying a burger, I want the burger to cost the same amount all the time. This is just gouging. Castillo pointed to e-commerce as well. Castillo pointed to e-commerce as well prepared to change prices like this. Ticket selling platforms like Ticketmaster and StubHub already use dynamic pricing. Again, because if you're using dynamic pricing for events, you already are expecting to pay a markup, right? If a game is halfway over, I know this was this way when I was a kid. Me and my dad would go to basketball games at a college that was near us. And if you went after halftime, they let you in free. Baseball games, if you go after the seventh inning, you can get in for free because the game is almost over. So I don't know if they're still doing that now or not, but there's a finite amount of time before your ticket is already valueless. So the dynamic pricing works because at some point the tickets are going to be expensive enough that what you're offering dynamically is still a deal, right? They're being intentionally misleading. Instacart, an online grocery delivery service, also uses the pricing model. Instacart uses Eversight, an AI-powered pricing tool that tests the price people will pay for something. Again, Instacart, because you're paying for somebody to shop for you, you're more willing to pay more money to get items than you would if you just went yourself. It's not the same. They're intentionally trying to mislead you. This almost feels like Wendy's PR. As dynamic pricing and the use of AI moves into fast food, companies risk confusing consumers and even losing customers. Lindsay Owens, the executive director of the Groundwork Collaborative, a DC progressive policy group, wrote in an email to CNN, quote, after considerable public pushback, Wendy's is now framing their dynamic pricing strategy as discounts during off-peak times instead of surge pricing during peak times, end quote, she wrote, which is exactly it. So that is it for me tonight. Yeah, that's it for me tonight. I am Conspiracy Brother here, wrapping the show up. I hope you found it informative. It's a little long, almost 3 hours, but just had a couple things I wanted to get out. Looks like I may have gone about 40 minutes longer than Conservative Brother when he was here. Again, please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. We like to bring you a different perspective with valuable information that you can use to try to free yourself from the institutionalized structure that they're trying to lock us all in. Please continue to tune into the Uncomfy Truths podcast. We should be back in 2 weeks. I think Conservative Brother said we'll be back on Saturday. So until then, peace and be free.